Hi everybody. As you can probably tell, I'm having some difficulties. My computer has now crashed 3 times. Um, I'm going to try and go live. I'm going to try again once more to set everything up and do what I've got planned tonight. But yeah, you'll have to bear with me just for a second until I get the camera sorted out again, because as you can tell, it's rather bright at the moment. Hold on a minute. I'm hoping I'm live at the moment. I think I am. I don't know on how many platforms they're. Really professional this is, isn't it? I'm very sorry. My old computer it can't take it anymore. Right. Hi everybody. I'm very sorry about that. Um there you go. It's not perfect, but I'm pretty sure I can go live and do what I've got planned tonight, and I've got a lot planned to talk about. I'm hoping you can all hear me okay. Hi, Winnie the Shrew. Hello, Gordon, you're live. I'm hoping I should be on live at least, I think, on YouTube, Twitter, and Rumble. I don't know why Rockfin just does not work. I don't know why. I should be live there as well, but as you can tell, I've had some problems. My old computer keeps dying. I've got multiple screens here. I've got actually a really quite good setup that people funded when I first started doing this. And as you can see, the colour's gone messed up now. I'm very sorry about this. But Um, but it was years ago, and obviously things have moved on, and I've added things. I remember very kindly when I first started doing this, when I added the extra screens, somebody sent me a graphics card which I put in that computer. This is how long the computer, so it's on its last legs, and I can't afford to replace it anyway. What I do basically is funded by you, and what I'm trying to do is get back to doing the live shows the way I was, and doing the reporting the way I was, and that's what I intend to do. Um, I want to go somewhere tomorrow, if possible, and do some reporting on an arms factory near me, which has been, well, there's been action against it by Palestine Action. I will get to it later in the stream and talk about it, but don't send me, please don't send any YouTube super chats. If you do, I will get the money eventually, but they take 30% off you and whatever on YouTube. It's ridiculous. So if you do want to fund my travels, I travelled down to London and back and over the last few days, which obviously was a huge expense. And I've got travel. I wanted to go and cover that thing tomorrow. Please send it to my PayPal address, which should be down below. It's paypal.me/FJ suppliers. And yeah, I'll go and cover what people aren't covering, and I'll try and give you the news that other people aren't. Hi Liam, how are you? 30k followers on TikTok while YouTube continues to throttle you at 17k. I know, it's ridiculous, isn't it? I've been on TikTok 5 seconds and I get to 30k, and YouTube, well, it just goes to show. But, you know, we'd known this all along. You're welcome, everybody. Thank you very much. I might as well get straight to it, because yesterday I was outside the Royal Courts of Justice because we found out that Julian Assange had been granted permission to appeal to the Supreme Court. That's what they granted him yesterday, and it's a convoluted thing. So let's just strap in, shall we, and have a look at what happened, well, yesterday, because get to my my little video that I put together of what went on there yesterday, and I'll show you that. If I'm a little bit disjointed, it's because everything crashed on me 3 times before I went live. So, well, we should get there. That is now that monitor. Yes, it is. Okay, we're going to get there. So this is basically what was going on outside the court yesterday, just to give you an idea of what the atmosphere was like.
There's only one decision. No extradition. There's only one decision. No extradition. We are here today to deliver a message to this court. The Lord Chief Justice, the judges that are deciding Julian Assange's right to appeal to the Supreme Court. And we have a message for these judges, we have a message for the CPS, and we have a message for the federal prosecutors of the USA. There's only one decision. No extradition. There's only one decision. No extradition. US, UK. Hands off Assange. US, UK. Hands off Assange. Watching this on the interweb, if you are seeing clips on the TikTok, please circulate this media. Please communicate with your friends, family and social groups, and discover for yourself the truth about Julian Assange and the criminality that he's covering up, for a man who exposed the war criminality not only in Afghanistan and Iraq, but today in Syria, in the Palestine, in Yemen. They wreak havoc upon the civilian populations. They kill and destroy civilians, and they do it in the name of freedom and democracy. Well, we're doing it in name and the freedom of speech. Free Julian Assange! 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 Free Julian Assange!
So that was Joe Brack, and I wanted to show that because it was brilliant, and he's brilliant, and the support there are brilliant. These are the speeches from outside the court after the decision was given.
What happened in court today is precisely what we wanted to happen. The High Court certified that we had raised point of law of general public importance, and that the Supreme Court has good grounds to hear this appeal. The situation now is that the Supreme Court has to decide whether it will hear the appeal. But make no mistake, we won today in court. But let's not forget that every time we win, as long as this case isn't dropped, as long as Julian isn't freed, Julian continues to suffer. For almost 3 years, he's been in Belmarsh prison, and he is suffering profoundly, day after day, week after week, year after year. Julian has to be freed, and we hope that this will soon end. But we are far from achieving justice in this case because Julian has been incarcerated for so long, and he should not have spent a single day in prison. If there had been justice, the officials who plotted, who conspired to murder Julian would be in the courtroom right now. If there were justice, the crimes that Julian exposed, war crimes, the killing of innocent civilians, would not be impugned. Our fight goes on, and we will fight this until Julian is free. Thank you.
This is Christian Ransom, the editor of WikiLeaks. This is what he said.
There's still to add, but the point that is being raised here in this court was the absurdity that after the magistrate court came to a decision, the Americans were allowed to bring forth the so-called assurances that they would treat Julian fairly if and when he was extradited to the United States. Everybody that has looked into those so-called assurances have condemned them and judged them as not being worth the paper they are written on. The American government has made such assurances with me before, and they have broken those assurances. They actually entail in those assurances the clause that they can change their mind at any moment. So it's not worth anything. But as Stella says, the fight will continue, and it will not end until Julian is freed from Belmarsh prison and until the US government drops this case, which is a blatant and serious attack on press freedom worldwide. But this today was a partial victory, but as Stella says, the punishment goes on. It's a punishment by process, a serious human rights violation. The torture is ongoing in Belmarsh prison. He has been there for more than 1,000 days. That is happening here in this country today. That is the news item of the day. Thank you.
I'll be ending this stream on something touching on what Christian Ransom is talking about there. Just reminded me. This is what Rebecca Vincent from Reporters Without Borders said. And she's been brilliant the whole way through this.
So, from Reporters Without Borders, I would just like to add, again, we welcome this decision. This is a positive step. It's not far enough yet, but it is a step in the right direction. This case is historical. It will be hugely precedent-setting. It will have implications for journalism and press freedom in the UK, in the US, and internationally for many years to come. It deserves review by the highest court in this land, and so we very much hope that the Supreme Court will accept this appeal. As others have said as well, the situation that Julian Assange himself is in is very urgent. We have serious concerns about his well-being at Belmarsh prison. The long-standing mental health issues are well documented. We have concerns about his physical health as well, especially knowing what we know now about the mini stroke that he suffered in October and about the reports of rising COVID infections in the prison again at this time. He is not safe as long as he is there. He should be immediately released whilst this process is ongoing. So from Reporters Without Borders, we will continue to campaign to free Assange. We call on the Biden administration again to drop the charges, to close this case once and for all. This legal process does not have to continue. It is in the power of those in the U.S. government to put a stop to this at any time. They can do so. And we will continue to be here and to monitor any further legal proceedings in this case.
So there you go. That'll clear up any confusion, of which there was confusion. This is how The Guardian broke the news. The Guardian reporter, I noticed who was covering. This is how he broke the news. This is Ben Quinn. He said Julian Assange has been refused leave to appeal against last month's ruling that he can be extradited to the US, which took account of US assurances. Other routes still open. So that's how he broke it. Although, to be fair to him, it was bloody confusing the way the decision was actually made. And in order for it to be sort of deconstructed in any sense made of this, you have to go to somebody who has sort of been almost averse in this gobbledygook speak, and that's Craig Murray, who was obviously in court. And he said this: the appearance, when Judge Burnett handed down this decision, lasted 2 minutes. Burnett told us that the court certified as being a matter of general public interest the question of whether diplomatic assurances not submitted in the substantive hearing, that's the one at the Magistrates' Court, could be submitted at the appeal stage at the Courts of Justice. It did not so certify to the other points raised. It refused leave to appeal to the Supreme Court. So you can see there how sort of the Guardian got it wrong, although it's funny that they got it wrong. And I got it right. You can ignore the last phrase he says there. It is customary that the High Court, he says, refuses leave to appeal with the certification of public interest. Julian can now appeal direct to the Supreme Court. That's all yesterday was. That's all it really means, which will decide whether or not to take the case. There's no guarantee that it will take the case, of course, but it should do. The refusal of leave by the High Court is purely a show of deference to the Supreme Court, he says, which decides itself what it will take. So it's sort of like legal gobbledygook speak, the way it was handled down, which is because the way things are done, apparently, that nobody can make any bloody sense of them unless you're a lawyer. The lawyers put this as the Supreme Court dines a la carte. And Craig goes on to say that it does not look like a substantial point. It looks like a technical point on timing and deadlines that this has been sort of reversed, or rather it hasn't been reversed, that this appeal has been allowed. Basically, what the judge is saying is, listen, okay, we reversed this decision based upon diplomatic assurances, but the diplomatic assurances weren't given until we got to the appeal stage at the High Courts of Justice. At the Magistrates' Court, which is the Magistrates' Court and the Old Bailey, that it was the longer hearing was, they didn't give those diplomatic assurances, and the judges sort of put the blame on Judge Baraitser, Craig alleges, in that she should have asked, well, have you got what assurances that will you give that Julian Assange won't be putting special administration measures? It's sort of like a technicality that the whole case has been sort of allowed to reach the appeal stage. He goes on to say, if any other points had been certified, though, which they weren't, there would have been detailed discussion in court of the United States penchant for torture, its dreadful prison conditions, and its long record of bad faith. It is an accepted point of law in the United States that domestic authorities are not bound by any assurance, commitment, or even treaty to foreign governments. You could talk about other, treaties and assurances that the United States have given in other areas that they've gone back on. There's a case I know that Richard Medhurst covered about, I think it was a Spanish journalist, that they just basically went back on all the assurances that was given. think that's correct. Although, tell me in the comments if I'm wrong. For the Supreme Court to refuse Assange's extradition on any of those grounds would be an official accusation against the United States' integrity and thus diplomatically difficult. Goes on to say, but the Supreme Court can refuse extradition on one point now certified by the High Court. That's a win, and it can be presented as nothing to do with anything bad about the USA and its governance. It's kind of like the way things have been done. It's given the court in this country wiggle room to get out sort of like on a technicality, and it's also given the US wiggle room to get out without their war crimes and everything coming out in court. That's kind of how it looks like to me. It looks like the United States have avoided scrutiny of their crimes so far by sort of pinky swearing these assurances at the appeal stage. Had it come in any sooner, they would have, had it come in at the lengthy court stage at the Old Bailey, then the defence could have presented those arguments then. Do you see what I mean? But because they brought them later, so it's given everybody wiggle room to get out of. So, and this is why I think Craig's ending it on a high note. Can there really be an end in sight for Julian? Is the British establishment quietly siding to the exit? Well, I certainly bloody hope so, because let's face it, things should never have got this far. This whole thing now, as Craig says, as Craig is alluding to there, it could be thrown out on a technicality, but honestly, it should have been thrown out on any number of things. I've said before, to call this a kangaroo court is an insult to kangaroos. First of all, kangaroos are Australian, and Julian's an Australian citizen. If there were kangaroos in that court, I've got a feeling that they would have said, hold on a minute. You're charging him with what now? With journalism? And had the sense to throw it out. It should have been thrown out on any number of things. If you go look back and look at the things that the evidence that has come out just in the last few years of what has gone on with this case, the FBI's chief, one of their main witnesses, Siggy Thordarson, lied in his testimony. He's admitted that he lied. This is a key witness in the Assange case. Let's just get the right article. The key witness in the testimony against in the indictment against Assange has admitted that what is in that indictment bears no resemblance to the truth whatsoever. This is an awful person that is one of their main witnesses that the FBI have relied upon. I spoke to a man who spent a week. I think it was a weekend, a few days in this Siggy Thordarson's company, and he's a proper creep, to say the least. The witness, who has a documented history with sociopathy and has received several convictions for sexual abuse of minors and wide-ranging financial fraud, made the admission in a newly published interview in Stunning, where he also confessed to having continued his crime spree whilst working with the Department of Justice and FBI, receiving a promise of immunity from prosecution. He's now in prison in Iceland. Iceland had to resurrect a decades-old law that they hadn't used in, decades, to put this man behind bars because he was continuing a crime spree because he was given immunity. This is somebody who messed with 15 young boys. One of them committed suicide. I spoke to a journalist who spent some time in his company, and I asked him what kind of person Sigurd Thordarson is like. And Magnus Anderson, I think his name is. Bjartmar Alexanderson, person who wrote this article. I spoke with him, and he told me he had to take a week off. That's how disgusted he was. That's how, his skin crawled after speaking with this Siggy the hacker, who ironically nobody can tell has hacked anything. And this is the FBI's witness. Who the FBI said Julian Assange instructed to hack the Icelandic government. Bjartmar told me, he explained to me, this is a fraudster who he thinks has conned the FBI into getting immunity, but, the FBI didn't care. They were blinded so much, I suppose, by their hatred for Julian Assange and the fact that they wanted to get him. This testimony this should have thrown everything out. The case should have been thrown out just with this coming out in the media. UCI Global spied on his meetings with his doctors. They spied on his meetings with, other members of WikiLeaks and everybody, actresses, politicians. They spied on them all while they're preparing this case against him. That is why the Pentagon Papers was thrown out. That's why That's why Daniel Ellsberg basically, was vindicated in what he did with the Pentagon Papers. It was the unwarranted spying that got the case thrown out in the end. Kangaroos would have thrown the case out based on that. There were any other things. The United States have all of Julian's documents and computers. They stole them all. After he was dragged out of the embassy, Ecuador handed them over to America. There was a ceremony. Kangaroos would have thrown the case out based on that. And I hate to remind people, but this is kind of important, really. Because remember, the United States, the reason that they got the extradition overturned in the first place at the High Court was because they pinky squared to the High Court. They gave a diplomatic assurance that Julian's life would be safe while he was in custody, and he wouldn't be subject to special administration measures unless Julian did something which meant that they had to put special administration measures on them, which means that you can guarantee that they would make sure that Julian did something for that to happen. But, even Amnesty International have called those assurances nonsense. Not worth the paper they're written on. I'm paraphrasing, but you see my point. But this is the state that pinky swearing, saying, "Yeah, we won't do anything to him. Honestly, we won't touch a hair on his head. He's safe. He's safe with us." Yes, I know the CIA drew up sketches to kidnap and kidnap and kill him while he was, in London. I know we were doing that, but honest, he's fine. Come on. Kangaroos would have thrown the case out then, wouldn't they? Let's remember, Julian is a political prisoner. There's no doubt about that. He's a political prisoner. He did exactly what journalists do. And they went after him because of it. He's the very definition of one. And we don't extradite political prisoners in this country. We don't do it. We have not extradited some of the worst people in history because of that fact. Julian's one of the best, in my opinion anyway. I think they'll build statues to him. In fact, they already have. It was that good, the statue was, and made such a brilliant impact that they wouldn't let it in this country. They held it up at the border because of the press it might have got. He's been in prison now for 1,000 days. That's without the arbitrary detention. And as Nils Meltzer has pointed out, they're slowly torturing Julian to death. And this is more the same because we're going to find out, 2 weeks maybe with the Supreme Court. I think they've got 2 weeks to apply to the Supreme Court. And then the Supreme Court will make a decision, and then they will schedule a hearing or whatever it is. This is going to be months, maybe even years, before it gets to that stage. Meanwhile, Julian's been slowly tortured to death. And this is what seemingly the aim is, to keep him quiet, to make an example of him, to say to other journalists around the world, look at what we'll do. Write to your politician, talk to your friends, educate people around you. We can't let this man be extradited to the United States, because if we do, we will have proved him right again. So there you go. That's my update from yesterday, and that's where we stand now. Yesterday was one of the very few days that I've been covering this that was a semi-good day as well. And we're still in the position where he's being tortured to death. Oh. Liam says the FBI traded immunity to a nonce in exchange for the star witness testimony. Exactly. Gudmund Stillerson has said that at least one Siggy victim has committed suicide. These are the sort of people that the FBI are relying on. Convicted pedophiles and fraudsters. All right. I want to talk a little bit about what's going on in Ukraine, because there's lots of talk right now. Lots of talk in the media and online and Twitter, etc., of possible war. I want to point something out. First of all, there's Ukraine. Right there, there's Russia over here. There's Ukraine, and here's, Eastern Europe. That's what it's all about. All of this stuff about protecting Ukraine, etc., it's all a geopolitical thing. All they're talking about now at the moment is a possible war in Ukraine. And I've got to be honest, I don't know whether there's going to be a possible war in Ukraine. I really don't. I suspect not, but that's really my guess. But the truth is this. I don't know, but I'm honest enough to tell you I don't know. The people telling you what's going on in Ukraine right now on the TV, they don't know either. They're getting all of their information, all of their information from sources at the top, from governmental sources or from sources within the military, etc. That's not the way journalism is done. That's the way propaganda is done. And propaganda is never truthful, especially when it comes to things militarily. You're seeing very little sourcing from the ground on this, are you? It's all top down. It's all from officials whose job it is, let's face it, to not tell you the truth and keep you in the dark, especially when it comes to military stuff. So all these people right now on Twitter and on the TV telling you there's going to be this in Ukraine and there's going to be that in Ukraine and whatever. I want you to think, where are they getting their information from? And if they're getting their information from their own government, then they're just pushing propaganda. They're just pushing rubbish. From the stuff I've seen from people on the ground in the Ukraine and in that side of things, people are 50-50 as to whether it's going to happen or not. And the reason I heard was Putin hasn't pushed a propaganda campaign behind this, as if he is going to invade, which is, I believe, what happened before Crimea. But that's, again, there are lots of things to consider here. And that's really what I want to talk to people about. And when they are hearing things, and they're hearing these reports from officials, and let's just say, this press reports from officials that these propagandists are pushing, it's not journalism. Every time they mention, and I've heard them mention it a lot, there are 100,000 Russian troops at the border. I want you to remember something. In Russia, they're in Russia. That's number one. The second thing is, there are more troops on the opposite side. I hear much more on the build-up on the opposite side. It's ridiculous to say that it's preparing an invasion when you don't know what's going on at that border. We have just sent, I believe, according to one report, the Royal Navy to the English Channel to help with the migrant issue. Does that mean that we're acting aggressively towards Europe and we're about to invade France? You can look at everything through different lenses. So whenever anybody says there's 100,000 Russian troops at the border, remember, there are, I hear, 125,000 Ukrainian troops on the other side. And obviously then you've got NATO troops as well, and I hear that Biden is sending more to that area. Every time these people start talking about Ukrainian president and the Ukrainian officials, I want you to remember Ukrainian people who have not had it easy for the last few years. And I want you to remember that isn't necessarily their own fault. They're just pawns in this. And those are the people really we should be thinking about, because their economy right now is tanking through all this. I saw video today from RT of, there was one protest, business owners I think it was, and looks like they were storming a governmental building. So the people are struggling. I hear there's a run on the banks, which means their economy is tanking, which means food is they're going to be in trouble and they're going to be scared. And nobody's talking about them. And I doubt very much whether any of these people have got their interests at all in mind. In the last few years, since the dictator, I think it's Lukashenko was overthrown in that coup, they've had a rough ride. There's neo-Nazi groups running around there. There's all sorts of people being armed. We've seen this sort of scenario play out elsewhere in the world, haven't we? And it's always the people that suffer. I don't know what is going on there, but I know it's going to be extremely difficult for the people. I want you to remember, while it's been difficult for them, who was on the board of a Ukrainian energy company not long ago, getting what, 85 grand a month, who had no experience? Was that Hunter Biden, was it? It's a Ukrainian energy firm, wasn't it? I want you to remember that. I want you to remember that when he was overthrown in that coup, it was a Biden and Obama administration that was pushing that from the American side. So whose fault is it that these people are suffering in Ukraine? Really? And I want you to remember that, you know, there's no need for NATO. Not when the Soviet Union was disbanded in, 91? There's no need for it. Why are they pushing ever eastward towards Russia's border? When America promised their diplomat, forgotten his name now, their foreign secretary, promised, Gorbachev, was it? That they wouldn't do that. They wouldn't go eastward. But they have. 14 countries now are to the east of Russia that are in NATO. How many more? Biden says, oh, not anytime soon with Ukraine. But you know that's the aim. You know they're just a pawn in this. Why do we need NATO? Seriously. The Cold War ended. Or did it? Did the Cold War just turn into a hybrid war? When you're listening to people's reports on this, and when you're listening to people's Twitter threads, and you're listening to breaking and this, that, and the other, and these say this and these say this, I want you to remember who has the best interests of Ukrainians in all this, of the people. And don't believe a damn word, not a single word, old media are telling you, not until you have it confirmed from sources on the ground. That's pretty much all I've got to say to you. Don't get fooled by the BS. Poroshenko. Is that the guy I was talking about? Robert Hickey. Biden is so much better than Trump. LOL. Yeah. I forgot who said it. I forgot who coined the phrase. I don't know who coined the phrase, but I've heard lots of people say it now. Biden is a better Trump than Trump. Really, if you look at everything he's done, he's a better Trump than Trump. Hey. Let's go to the next. The next story, because this is horrible. This is awful. This is a terrible story. So this is an awful story. It's terrible. It really is. A British man, Matthew Wilson, has been shot through a wall in Georgia, in the US. Let me just see if I can bring the guy's picture up, because there he is. Yeah, it's a terrible story, this is, because a British man, Matthew Wilson, has been shot through a wall in Georgia, in America, while staying with his girlfriend. He'd been visiting his girlfriend when he was shot. He was an astrophysicist, killed by a stray bullet that travelled through a wall and hit him in his bed. Dr. Matthew Wilson, 31, from Chertsey, Surrey, was found with a single gunshot wound to the head. I can't imagine a world where this happens. Police were called to an apartment in Brookhaven, Atlanta at 2 o'clock in the morning. last Sunday. Sergeant Jake Kissel from the Brookhaven Police Department said the shooting was believed to have been a random act. There have been no arrests so far. It's just believed to be somebody firing a gun. Just willy-nilly, I suppose. Like, woohoo! Boom, 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 boom! You know, that sort of thing. Or maybe target practice or whatever, you know. Sergeant Kissel said the stray bullet hit Dr. Wilson, travelled less than 100 yards and entered through an exterior wall of the apartment. The two apartment complexes where the gunfire took place and where Matthew was staying, they're separated by a patch of wood, so they back up on each other. We're saying it's the reckless discharge of firearms from one apartment complex, and the stray bullet travelled through the woods and entered his apartment. Dr. Wilson was in the US visiting his girlfriend, Catherine Shepherd. Aman Carr, who shared the flat with Miss Shepherd, told BBC Breakfast multiple rounds of gunshots were fired in the opposite complex, about 20 foot away, in the early hours of Saturday 16th of January. He added that the gunfire had happened before, but not for so long. He said the pair moved to the apartment last August and recalled two similar incidents in October and November when police had been called, but said it was just a few shots on those occasions. Just a few shots, you know? Just a few shots, you know? My sports team won. This time it kept going on for 20-30 minutes until one of the stray bullets hit Matthew. So that, you know... It's like the Wild West. Mr. Carr said he hoped somebody would come forward with more information on the incident because as much as it's an accident, it's also not, because the sheer number of shots were fired. It's reckless discharge of a firearm, isn't it? You know, at least at the minimum. I mean, in this country, you'd be done for murder probably in this country for that. It's hard to see how something so random happened. It's reckless people with guns. Sergeant Kissel said investigators were following up on all leads, adding, "We're receiving tips from the public and our investigative team has been working around the clock." He said an innocent bystander had been struck by stray bullets and was the first incident of its kind in Brookhaven. Well, you know, at least it's the first one in the town. It's not the first one in the country, though, is it? It's just the first one in the town of Brookhaven, with about 20 people living in it. Even though we believe that it was a random act and complete reckless discharging of firearms, we're still approaching it as a homicide. Dr. Wilson was taken to the local trauma centre but died of his injuries. The Foreign Office said it was supporting the family of a British man. Mate, you poor guy. If you've never been to America, it's a culture shock for somebody from the UK. There's a statistic that I heard today. I did have a video set up, but yeah, everything crashed. I'm sorry, so I'm going to have to tell you what it's about, what the statistic is. But the statistic is, if a British person if you're from the UK and you go to the US on holiday for 3.5 days, 3.5 days, you are as likely to get killed by a gunshot as you are spending a year or over a year in the UK. 3.5 days to a year. I spent 3 months in the US, and within 72 hours of me being there, I saw my first gun. Like, you know, I mean, you see gun as you work through the airport, but I mean, my first gun, like, in the home. The culture is just different. It's scary. It really is. And I know people, my friends who've been to America, and I see the first thing that they go to is the gun range, you know? I see lots of people do that. And, I mean, when I was there, I spent 3 months there. So if you think about it, I spent 3 months there. We'll do that math in a minute. But just in that stay, I saw multiple guns. One person was very proud of their little revolver because it had a pearl handle. Other people were very happy about all sorts of guns that they had. Everybody had guns. And that was California I went to as well. I spent 3 months in the US, and if you extrapolate that out, that means I was more likely, it was in my early 30s I went there, I was more likely in my time in America for those 3 months to get shot in those 3 months than I was my entire life up until that point in the UK. That's basically what the odds work out to be. It's shocking. I'll show you how shocking, and I'm going to show a mainstream source for this as well. It's the New York Times. Comparing gun deaths, and they did an article here comparing gun deaths by country. You see there, gun homicides in Germany are about as common as deaths from thrown being... I'll get to that in a minute. I've got this, I think, on... Give me a second. So, I don't know whether you can see this. See if I can... So this is gun homicides per day. It's a chart of gun homicides, gun deaths per day. If each country had the same population as the United States. Just look at it off the chart. And it only takes into consideration, by the way, Western countries that have a GDP per capita of over $25,000. You know, that's staggering, isn't it? That really is staggering. And what that equates to is really quite scary. Because compared to the rest of the world, it shows you how likely you are. Here we go. The accompanying table shows the mortality rate for gun homicides in a variety of countries, along with the correspondingly likely cause of death in the United States. So, getting killed by a gun in the United States, getting killed by a gun in England, yeah? So getting killed by a gun with the United States is about the same, odds-wise, as getting killed by a combine harvester in the UK. That's the difference. Getting killed by a gun in the getting killed by a gun in the UK is about equitable as getting killed by machinery in the US. Sorry, I got it the wrong way around. My apologies on that. Do you see how dangerous it is? And the only thing is the gun laws. It's the only thing that's different. The culture is astounding. Those 3 months I spent in the US, I did not feel safe. I just didn't. My friend shot himself while I was there. Is it any wonder that you get incidents where people like this poor guy are getting shot in random, shootings. We've heard incidents of, Breonna Taylor getting shot through her apartment wall. I can't get my head around why something isn't done about it. There's no political will to get anything done about it. It's dangerous, it really is. I can't do the next thing I wanted to talk about because everything crashed. I'm very sorry. And I can't do that. I did have somebody, a couple of people ask me to explain to them how to buy Bitcoin, or how I bought Bitcoin. I'm going to be doing that. I'll do a little video on it in the next few days to the people who've asked me. And it's dropped a lot, Bitcoin has. So you probably, you know, some would say it's a good time to buy. For anybody who is wondering, I just buy it through Coinbase. I'm not endorsed by anybody, but that's all I do. I'll do a little video on it, and we'll talk about it another time. I did have things set up to go, but again, everything crashed. I'm very sorry. I want to talk about this. Go away. Go and lie down. Go on. Just bear with me a second, please. Sorry about that. So, Palestine Action are at it again. Elbit, the arms company that, among other things, sells motors for drones that are used in conflicts, including, conflicts that are used by Israeli forces on Palestinians. Are being targeted at Elbit. The Shenston factory was targeted on the 24th by activists from Palestine Action, and I'm hoping I did have this set up. I'm very sorry. Like I say, everything crashed. Everything crashed like 3 times. I had it all set up. I need a new computer. Okay. Yeah, they targeted Elbit Shenston factory. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning of the stream, I wouldn't mind going and covering this. This is not far from me. So if you'd like me to go and cover this and speak to the people and the locals, etc., about that factory, it's not far from me. So, you know, from my travel and what have you, and I'll go there tomorrow and find out, you know, what's going on and what damage has been done. Because it looks like there was a lot of damage, but I also want to speak to the locals in the area and maybe even people from Elbit as well, if possible. And find out, you know, exactly how everybody feels about this. Ask the locals, see if they know what Elbit do, you know why they are being targeted in this way. Because, as you can see, there's a hell of a lot been going on there. And they really did a lot of, they did a lot of action, should we say, in the time they were there. On the roof, activists have gotten access to the interior of Elbit Shenston site and drenched the inside with paint, extinguished Elbit's immoral industry, they said. Now, this is coming really soon after Elbit have, I think it was at Elbit that Palestine Action have been targeting in Oldham. And they've sold their main office, their head office has been sold as a result of this kind of direct action from Palestine Action. Activists are safe and has resisted removal from... I'm going to go through the whole thread and show you what happened. They did get arrested in the end, and I'll show you that. So they've used the factory razor wire. They've repurposed it. You can see there they've smashed the windows, and there's a hell of a lot of damage they've done. Obviously, I'm not endorsing any of this. Just like to say that to any censors out there who are Elbit secure his belongings and chucking them, harassing and grabbing the activists. So they got up there, started grabbing them, and were trying to physically. Yeah, they're trying to physically. Is that people who work for them are doing that? Oh, the security. Those boots won't lick you back, guys. You know that, don't you? Yeah. Security are fouled up. You effing dare, I heard somebody say then. So, then the police turned up, as you can see. In droves. Ladders can be used for climbing up and knocking down. Oh, is that the air conditioning? Shouldn't laugh. I shouldn't laugh. I'm not condoning this. Okay, so they got arrested. There's the one activist that was arrested.
I think it's the paint.
Nice one.
Israel's weapons trade. Do they? Have they knocked hell out the wall? And then the police came in and they were arrested. There's the one young lady. There's the other gentleman. There's the other guy. Another one. And this has all happened, I think it was yesterday. No, today this happened.
Weapons for destruction.
I'm an ordinary man, nothing special, nothing grand. I've had to work for everything I own. I've never asked for a lot, I was happy with what I got. Enough to keep my family and my home. Now they say the times are hard, and they've handed me my cards. They say there's not the work to go around, and when the whistle blows, the gates will finally close. Tonight they're gonna shut this factory down, and they tear it down.
I know I'm calling if ever I've got some redecorating to do. If ever I want a wall knocked through or anything like that, I know I'm calling. I'm allowed to. Shouldn't laugh. I shouldn't laugh. I get censored. And here they are. They were let out.
Down! Shut Elbit down! Shut Elbit down! We shut Elbit down!
You sure did.
They shut it down for I don't know how long. Like I say, People send me enough for the train ride there and back. I'll go there tomorrow and I'll I'll report from there. I don't condone anything that these people did. On an unrelated note, I would just like to say, not all heroes wear capes. That's all really I've got to say about that. I've got a recommendation to make for people. If you're watching this, which you will be if you're hearing this voice, my voice. There's something that I watched yesterday that I really highly recommend. It's by Declassified, and it's a video that they've done on BAE Systems on the arms industry. And I really can't suggest it highly enough. It's on YouTube. It's called Wharton's War on Yemen. And from Declassified UK, Matt Kennard is the journalist. And as he says here, hardly anyone knows the extent of UK support for the Saudi war on Yemen because our media refuses to cover it properly. You know, I'm covering Palestine action because our media are not covering what's happening there, and these activists that are stopping drones that are being, drones factories supplying forces that are being in Israel that are being used for human rights violations on Palestinians. But also the war in Yemen continues, and we're supporting this war. And this video by Matt Kennard on YouTube, it highlights just how deeply those ties go. Now, I don't want to get too deep into it. All I will say is please go and watch the video. But if you want a little taster of what you find out there, you may remember there was a war crime that I covered years ago that was perpetrated on people in Yemen, and it was the bombing of a funeral in Sana'a. And if I can show you this, I will do. I'm not sure whether I'll get a strike, but it's worth giving you an idea of just how bad it was. And this is the report from the Independent. This is the aftermath of the strike. Now, I've shown this before. It's a double tap. Strike. It was a funeral in Yemen that was hit by a Saudi airstrike. It killed multiple civilians, including children. They said that they got some Houthi rebels, although that was never confirmed. It was known that there were civilians at that funeral. The funeral was advertised on Facebook. And in the report by Matt Kennard and Declassified, he interviews a lady from the Foreign Office who was involved in giving out the contracts, the weapons contracts, the arms sort of, certificates to say that you can sell arms to Saudi Arabia. We know that our bombs and our planes are being used in war crimes in Yemen by Saudi Arabia. To the extent of which Matt goes into in his film, there is the planes that they bought off us, these little planes that the rockets are fired by, they have to be maintained. And if we stop selling bombs to Saudi Arabia for their planes, it's not like that they can buy some other bombs and just fit that on the plane. It's a whole package thing, you know. And when you sell planes to a regime like Saudi Arabia, you're not just selling the planes, you're selling, you know, you're selling the insurance that you're going to fix those planes as well and maintain them. So every week from BAE Systems Wharton, a plane takes off, a private plane takes off and ends up from the UK via somewhere else, ends up in Saudi Arabia with parts and maybe even weapons. We don't know. The Freedom of Information Act that Matt put on there came back negative. Couldn't find out. He couldn't find out what was on the shipment. But shipment goes out every week to Saudi Arabia to keep these planes in order. These planes that are being used in human rights, blatant human rights violations in the war on Yemen. Yemen is one of the poorest countries in the world. Half of the people are starving. There's the biggest cholera outbreak in history in Yemen. It's 2022. There was the biggest cholera outbreak in Yemen a couple of years ago as a result of this dirty war that's been perpetrated on them and all the human rights violations. Where do you get, you know, a cholera outbreak from? Well, you get a cholera outbreak from dirty water. So what did the Saudi planes do? The Saudi bombs that we supply, where did they drop them? On the water towers to exacerbate the problem. Get the people turning against what they call Iran-backed Houthi rebels. We've got no business in these wars. And we certainly have got no business arming a Saudi Arabian regime that, let's face it, chopped the head off a journalist whose last article in the Washington Post was calling for the end to the war on Yemen. And I'm talking, of course, about Jamal Khashoggi. How can we still be providing weapons and arms contracts and servicing these planes that are committing these human rights violations in one of the poorest nations in the world? How can we doing that to a regime that chops up journalists because they ask for an end to that war? What kind of monsters are we? It really is a great documentary, that is. Please go and watch it. It's about 25 minutes long. And then get involved. If you are from that area, from the Wharton area, write to your politician. Take some sort of action. Yemen, Palestine, these war zones right now, Afghanistan, up until very recently, they're testing grounds for these weapons that we're supplying these regimes. And that takes me back to something else as well about the Ukraine thing that's going on right now. When they're talking about war with Ukraine, you know, why? Why? Because Afghanistan went so well, right? Because defeating the Taliban was so easy? You want to go against Russia? How long is your memory? Are you a goldfish? The people who are beating the drums for war. These are crazy times, they really are. Right, I that's pretty much it. That's pretty much all I wanted to talk about, everybody. I'm sorry that I messed up, and well, I say I messed up, and so that the computer totally and utterly screwed me over. There were a couple of other things I wanted to talk about. Nothing really important. There was a great video I wanted to share you on the situation at the moment with COVID. I know a couple of people in the chat have been saying, Gordon, blah, 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 COVID, blah, 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 fell for it, blah, 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 don't know what you're doing. The statistics are starting to come out that vindicate the people who were saying that this is being exaggerated for authoritarian purposes, of which I've pretty much been along with you there all along saying that. But there's still some statistics coming out. There's a guy called Dr. John Campbell on YouTube. He's basically who I get all the information from, and he did a video it's about a week ago. I was going to talk about this last week, but I got food poisoning. That was lovely. And through a Freedom of Information Act request, it turns out that there have been less than 10,000 deaths in this country, in the UK, from COVID, as a result of COVID, with no other comorbidities, or whatever they say. Less than 10,000. And the average age of those people is 81.5 years old. Now, the average age of people in the UK is 79. So I'll have to check, but it does look like, if that's the case, you were more likely to die of old age than of COVID, which is a statistic that really needs looking into. I did have those videos set up as well, but, you know, like I said, the computer crashed on me 3 times. All right, I think that's everybody. That's everything, everybody. Hey, Slow News Day. Slow News Day is here. Love you. Love you, Steve. RSFO says Khashoggi was not just decapitated, he was chopped up to bits. Yes, he was. The reports I heard, although they were, you know, reports from official sources, say that they began to chop him up while he was technically still alive, while he was unconscious. Let's sell them some weapons. I'm sure they won't use them for any nefarious things. I'm sure they'll use them totally above board, and they won't infringe on anybody's human rights. I'm sure that that's the case, right? Right? But money is always the case. All right, everybody. I think that's it. That's it for tonight. Screw Google says, don't worry about the trolls, Gordon. The trolls are welcome here. You're all welcome here. I'm just trying to give you the facts as I see them, everybody. I'm not your enemy. And I'd like everybody to remember that as well. You know, whether you're on the side of the vaxxed or the unvaxxed, these people are not your enemy, either side. You know? The people who've been lying to you about everything, they're your enemy. And they're all of our enemies. Thank you very much, everybody. I'm going to go and have something to eat now and try and calm down. How I didn't lose my shit when my computer screwed up 3 times at the beginning of this, I don't know. Thanks, everybody. Love you all. Peace out. Be Julian Assange.